I'm a miracle. Yeah, I'm a miracle. A lot of people in the hospital call me medical miracle.
18 days on a ventilator, nearly 30 days in the ICU.
And I'll take this syringe here.
3 times intubated, a tracheostomy. His throat healing, he still eats through a tube.
Right here is my stomach tube.
At the worst, his heart nearly stopped beating. The miracle, he's alive.
Is there a point where you realized this may be it?
There was a point where it hurt to take even one breath. And I did actually at one time just want to die. But then I heard a voice in my head that said, "You're being selfish."
Selfish because he thought he'd mar graduation for one daughter and a birthday for another. He had a wife, 2 parents, a church, and friends that loved him. He also had a team of doctors, nurses, and respiratory therapists caring and pulling for him.
You know, the whole time that he was here, you know, I don't know if our patients can hear us or if he even heard it, but I used to tell him, don't give up. And I don't know if he heard that, and I would like to know if he heard me saying that to him.
Kevin says he does remember that. He wasn't sure if he imagined it, but he remembers it and a nurse named Beth.
She's the one that comes up and told me, you know, I was there the night you almost died. And, you know, I'm like, I knew nothing about that.
COVID-19 keeps patients like Kevin sedated and separated from loved ones. Medical staff wear masks and gowns, hard to know who's who. Beth Gelston was in the room on Swink's worst day.
He started to crash.
This is when his heart nearly stopped.
It did. So I was caring for him that day and in the room with him while all of this was happening. And when I saw him on the day that he left the hospital, I told him that. I told him that he almost died and I thought he was going to die. And I'm so thankful that he didn't.
Kevin Swink now an inspiration for the staff that saved him.
How do you cope with patients as sick as Kevin?
In the beginning of all of this, it definitely wasn't easy, and a lot of us left in tears a lot of the time. But I really believe that we've become together as such a support for each other. And also seeing people improve, it's helped. Like the fact that Kevin is home and doing so much better, it helps. It really helps us to know that we're making this much of an impact.
Kevin Swink, not typical in another way. 50 years old, no underlying medical conditions, otherwise healthy. Another COVID-19 mystery. Some, for reasons still not understood, get deathly ill, while others barely know they have it.
Is very confusing to us. And, I think there are people that are looking into why this might be. Could it be related to genetics? Could it be related to the viral load or the amount of virus that the person's exposed to?
Kevin's recovery as mysterious as his illness. His father also tested positive and may not recover. Other family members got it too and were barely affected.
It just blindsided me. I didn't think I'd get it. I didn't think there was any possibility or anything like that.
When he was discharged, his church organized a drive-by parade. Kevin will see graduations and birthdays. He's looking forward to solid food. A double portion of Maryland crab cakes.
How sweet is life?
Nice. Very sweet. Very sweet.
This dog is being trained to detect prostate cancer. She's presented with urine samples and rewarded when she identifies the correct one.
Good girl. What a good girl.
This dog is able to identify the odour of malaria sufferers. Their next mission here is to train dogs to sniff out people infected with COVID-19.
The way we're going to do that is by collecting using face masks, and we're asking people to wear these face masks for a few hours, and then we carefully collect those. And the other thing we're going to do is get people to wear nylon socks. That sounds a bit strange, but we know from our previous experience that this is a really good way of collecting odours from people, and it's such an easy way to do it.
If the training is successful, one of their first deployments is likely to be airports, where dogs are already used to sniff out drugs and other contraband. If they help reopen the travel industry, That could be the boost to international trade that governments everywhere have been looking for.
He said, I need to do a rather aggressive treatment on you. Do you have a wife and children? If so, we need to call them and tell them, we need to essentially tell them goodbye, because you have about a 20% chance of surviving this.
I can't even imagine. I mean, is it hard to talk about?
The hardest part of all to remember is the phone call to my wife and kids. I mean, that was just awful.
What started as a cough and a fever ended with 49-year-old Michael Herbert in the ICU on a ventilator for 7 days, unsure if he'd ever see his family again.
I didn't know what was going to happen, if I was going to wake up or not.
In all the numbers we hear about coronavirus, number infected, number who have sadly died, we haven't heard as much about another group of patients, those who have recovered.
There are more than 1 million people that have recovered. Many people are doing very well. There may be some individuals who will have some long-term effects because it depends on how severe the virus was.
How are you doing? What does recovery mean for you?
When I first got out of the hospital, I was very weak, and I'd been told by the doctors, the pulmonologists in particular, that my lungs would probably take 4 to 8 weeks to heal.
Was that a concern that you might have long-term impacts on your lungs?
I can tell they're not 100% right now, and I guess I shouldn't expect them to be. They told me it would be a while for them to be all the way back. Again, just like everybody else, I think there's a lot of unknown here.
There are still a lot of unknowns, and even studying recovery of coronavirus patients seemed like a luxury in the early days of this pandemic.
Today is pretty intense.
But now Dr. Reynold Panettiere is trying to decipher these unknowns by conducting a 6-month study of coronavirus patients who have recovered.
There's several cases and participants who've described this ongoing fatigue and malaise, a feeling of not well. What is curious is these patients, pre-morbid or prior to the infection, were even aggressive athletes. We would not have predicted that.
One thing that could help predict long-term effects is looking at what happened during other coronavirus outbreaks. Take a look at this. Those are fibrous stripes on the lungs. It almost looks like spattered paint. These could be an early sign of pulmonary fibrosis. That's a type of scarring of the lungs. Previous studies of coronaviruses like SARS and MERS have identified patients who had long-lasting fibrosis, and now we are seeing reports of COVID-19 patients with these same fibrous stripes on their CT scans. It's another example of what we're still learning. From infection to recovery, we're still not sure exactly how this virus will truly affect us long term.
It's 6 weeks since you were, quote, off the breathing machine and in the process of recovery. How are you doing 6 weeks later?
I'm doing so much better. When I finally got to see them again, eventually, once I was taken off the ventilator, it was like the best thing that ever happened to me.
متلازمة كواساكي ديزيز هو عبارة عن التهاب في الأوعية الدموية المتوسطة الحجم وصغيرة الحجم. عادة تؤثر 80% من الحالات، تشمل الأطفال اللي أعمارهم أقل من 5 سنين. المسبب الرئيسي لمتلازمة كواساكي ديزيز مش معروف، لكن بنعرف إنه المحفز لسبب متلازمة كواساكي ديزيز هو عبارة عن انفكشنز أو التهابات، وغالبا ما تكون التهابات فيروسية. الالتهاب الفيروسي يحفز جهاز المناعة عند الأطفال لإفراز كميات هائلة جدا من المواد الالتهابية. هاي الأجسام هي التي تدمر الأعضاء الموجودة عند الطفل. العلاج إحنا نعمل له تارجتد للسيتوكروم ستورم اللي هي عاصفة السيتوكاين أو عاصفة الأجسام الالتهابية. يعني بيكون موجه حتى أول شيء نعادل الأجسام الالتهابية اللي صارت في الدم. ثانيا حتى نعمل بلوك على جهاز المناعة ما يفرز الأجسام الالتهابية. بال 2009 بلشت تطلع حالات اللي هي اسمها الصدمة الناتجة عن متلازمة كواساكي ديزيز، ومعنى تؤدي إلى الصدمة يعني أنه بصير هبوط في ضغط الدم، صعوبة بالغة في التنفس، أعضاء الجسم وظائفها بتصير تسيء زي القلب، زي الرئة، زي الكبد، ولذلك تستدعي حالاتهم الدخول إلى العناية الحثيثة. احنا بنعرف المرضى اللي يصابوا في الكوفيد 19 80% لا يستدعون الدخول إلى المستشفى، 20% حالتهم بتكون متوسطة وتستدعي الدخول إلى المستشفى. من 20% 5% فقط تستدعي حالاتهم إلى دخول العناية المركزة. 5% هو ناتج عن برضه تحفيز جهاز المناعي عند مرضى الكوفيد 19، وعندما يتم تحفيز أو تنبيه الجهاز المناعي يخرج عن السيطرة وتحكم الجسم فيه، ويصير يعمل سيتوكاين ستورم، بالضبط زي الكواساكي ديزيز شوك سندروم، بالضبط زي متلازمة كواساكي ديزيز التي تؤدي إلى الصدمة.